Hello everyone. Welcome to our content lesson for today, continuing with analyzing the article. Today's lesson is going to be a little bit longer than usual. We have a lot of information to cover, so buckle up. A few announcements and reminders to start off with. If you would like to redo the assignment number 18 article comprehension quiz, then you need to email Mr. Fitzpatrick and let him know so that he can unlock that. The last day to turn in any makeup work for numbers 16 through 19 is this Friday. We will not accept any of that work after this Friday. Today, and today only, our Zoom meeting will take place 45 minutes after the start of class. I know usually it is 30 minutes, but today only, because this lesson is going to be longer, we will meet 45 minutes after the start of class. And as I've said before, you are able to access any previous content lesson videos through the Bitmoji Classroom by clicking on that old lessons link. Our learning intention for today is to be able to identify the author's use of claim, reasoning, and evidence, as well as the three forms of rhetoric. In order to show that you have learned this, you will take a quiz based on the content of this lesson. The reason why we need to spend so much time talking about this is because your final assignment of this unit will be an argumentative essay in which you need to demonstrate understanding and the use of claim, evidence, reasoning, and the three forms of rhetoric. In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the claim, reasoning, and evidence used throughout the article, as well as the ethos, pathos, and logos that we see, otherwise known as rhetoric. The quiz for this lesson is going to ask you to identify the same pieces of evidence and rhetoric that I am pointing out in this lesson, which means that it would be a good idea to pause the video right now and open up the quiz. Maybe look through some of the questions so that when we get to one of the answers, you'll be able to answer that question correctly. So first, let's do a bit of review of ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is all about establishing trust and credibility. To make yourself credible is to convince your audience that you know what you're talking about, that you can be trusted with the information that you're giving. You can also bring another person into your argument who is an expert. Even if you are not, you have their expertise to build trust in your argument. You can use ethos by including certain things into your argument, such as explanation of your own expertise. If you talk about your education, what degrees you have, any personal experience you have in what you're talking about, and using quotes and the experiences from other experts. Pathos is getting your audience to feel an emotional connection with your argument. The more powerful the emotion, the more likely your audience is to agree with you. If it works, it's very powerful. It can be more powerful than the other two forms, but it comes with some risk. It might not always work. You can include pathos into your argument by using anecdotes and emotional word choice. Anecdotes are personal stories that you tell to your audience. They can be your own personal stories or other people's stories that you are sharing secondhand. And using specific words can build emotional connections throughout your essay or your speech. Logos is all of your facts, your statistics, your rational thought. This is everything that makes sense. You can't disagree with something that is proven to be true. Logos helps you to defend your argument against the counter arguments of other people. You can include logos into your own argument by having anything that is measured, a percentage of something, a count, this many people out of this many people. Any fact, any statistic, the result of a mathematical equation, a scientific effect, any of that stuff can be an example of logos. You can also apply common sense by pointing out something that everybody would be able to agree on. So in section A of the article, we see the author's claim. Now, as I mentioned in a previous content lesson, the author's claim is mostly implied. By reading the author's argument, we understand what his claim is without him having to directly tell it to us. So in section A, paragraph 2 is one of the ways we see the author hinting at what his claim is. In paragraph 3, we see our first piece of evidence. The author brings up the General Social Survey and the results of that survey that blacks have scored lower on the vocabulary test than whites. Anything that is the result of a survey or a scientific experiment is going to be considered logos, logic, facts, statistics. Another piece of evidence we see is the author bringing in an expert, sociologist Min Swing Wong. This is the author using ethos. They bring in another expert to help build the credibility of their argument. Also in paragraph 4, we see a statistic being brought up, 5.49 questions being answered correctly as opposed to 6.33. This is another result of an experiment, meaning it is a fact, a statistic, which means it's logos. In paragraph 5, we see that same statistic brought up again, the result of the survey, meaning it is logos. At the end of paragraph 5, the author brings in his reasoning. Now, to understand why this is reasoning, you need to understand that any time the author talks about how bad something currently is or how good something could be, he's bringing up his reasons as to why the change needs to happen. In paragraph 6, we see the author bring in more reasoning. In this case, he's pointing out that this research has gone largely unnoticed, that people do not know about this problem, which is a reason why it has to be changed. We also see in paragraph 6, the author bringing up other field experiments, which he later cites in his citation at the end of the article, but he brings up these other experiments and the results that they found, which means he is bringing in facts and statistics, logos. In paragraph 7, the author introduces us to another expert, psychologists such as Claude Steele. Bringing in the other expert means he is using ethos, someone else's credibility. Also in paragraph 7, the author gives us the definition for stereotype threat. If the author gives us any type of definition or factual explanation of something, he is including logos. The audience can't argue what the definition of something is. It is a fact. In paragraph 8, the author brings in another reason why this needs to change. It is because the threats do not have to take place at a conscious level, meaning there's a reason why it is such a problem. And when the author shares the experience of others, the people who have taken part in the surveys, he is bringing in their credibility as well, ethos. And we've already talked about how paragraph 9 is a huge example of the author's reasoning and their use of pathos. In paragraph 10, the author brings in even more experts, Gregory M. Walton and Stephen J. Spencer, using, yet again, more ethos to establish his credibility. In paragraph 11, the author defines for us what SAT scores are, which is a fact. You cannot argue against what an SAT score is or what it does. And in paragraph 12, he quotes Spencer, which is a huge piece of evidence. And using their quote means he is building in even more credibility. You'll also notice how section E, which is in the middle of the article, has a lot of evidence. In paragraph 13, the author continues giving us evidence, this time in the form of common sense, saying that in a pure meritocracy, the college admissions officer ought to pick the man, which would be common sense. If one is better than the other, obviously you would pick that one. And the evidence continues in paragraph 14, when the author brings in the meta-analyses involving 19,000 students. At the end of paragraph 14, the author brings up what would be the benefit that fixing the problem would have an incredible effect. In paragraph 15, The author continues the evidence by having another quote from Spencer, more ethos. Within this quote, though, the author brings in more reasoning. This quote is evidence, but it also helps to serve his reasons. That if this problem were to continue, it would build in discrimination into the system. Now, one point that we haven't really talked about is the counterclaim. Here in paragraph 16, the author addresses what his opponent would say in response to his article. And in the following paragraph, he is going to counter that claim. In paragraph 17, the author again uses common sense with the phrase, everyone can agree that schools and companies should get students and workers to perform at their full potential. Common sense is another example of logos. And in paragraph 18, he brings in more of the reasoning by saying the stereotype threats are diminished. They're lowered when race and gender are not made obvious. So this is the positive effect of changing what the author wants changed. The author then brings in yet another study, which is more evidence and more logic and statistics that cannot be argued against. At the end of paragraph 18, the author is using quite a bit of pathos when he brings up the importance of family, bolstering students' confidence, and giving people a sense of belonging. Those phrases in that example is meant to give the audience an emotional connection. In our last paragraph, we see the author imply his claim once again. Like you usually do in a conclusion, you restate your argument, your claim. And at the end of paragraph 19, the author finishes with one of the best pieces of reasoning in the article. When confronted by challenges that inevitably arise in these contexts, people threatened by stereotypes get the false message that they ought to be doing something else, which is the whole reason why they need to change. And that's it. We made it to the end. Don't forget that in the classwork tab, you'll find assignment number 26, the quiz for this content lesson video. Hopefully you took my advice and you have this quiz open in another tab right now and have been going through and answering the questions while watching the video. Don't forget that our Zoom today takes place 45 minutes after the start of class. I'll see you there.